James had always dreamed of the stars. As a child, he would lie on the grass staring up at the night sky, imagining what life might be like on distant planets. The twinkling lights above whispered promises of adventure, danger, and discovery. Now, years later, he was finally living that dream, but nothing had prepared him for Zephyria. The planet was unlike anything James had ever seen. From the moment his ship entered its atmosphere, the sky shimmered with colors that seemed almost alive. Mountains glowed with soft luminescence. Rivers flowed with liquid silver, and forests stretched endlessly, their leaves shining like crystals. Zephyria was beautiful, yes, but it was also dangerous. The Zephyrians, its ruling species, were known across the galaxy for their power, their intelligence, and their unyielding pride. Humanity had never dealt with them before. James's mission was simple to state, but impossible in nature. Gain their trust, prove Earth's worth, and forge an alliance. The survival of his planet depended on it. As James stepped out of his ship, the ground beneath him sparkled faintly, almost as if the planet recognized a new visitor. Citizens of Zephyria paused to watch him. Their forms were elegant, taller than humans, with skin that seemed to catch light in ways that made them appear almost ethereal. Their voices were soft but resonant, musical in tone, carrying words he could not understand. James bowed politely, trying not to draw too much attention, though he could feel every gaze burning into him. He knew he looked different, clumsy in his human suit, his posture rigid, his skin rough and pale compared to the flowing elegance of the Zephyrians. The palace, the center of Zephyrian power, loomed ahead. Its towers spiraled high, shimmering with an inner light, and its gates were guarded by beings that radiated both grace and authority. Every step James took toward it made his heart pound faster. He had trained for diplomacy, for strategy, for survival, but he had never trained for awe, and yet nothing prepared him for her, Princess Lyra. She appeared at the top of the grand staircase, her presence commanding silence. Her skin shimmered softly like the morning sun on crystal water. Her hair flowed behind her like liquid silver, and her eyes, bright, piercing yet warm, fixed on James. For a moment he froze. The air around her seemed to hum, vibrating with a power he could not name. Yet in her gaze there was something more than authority. There was curiosity and recognition. She descended the stairs slowly, each step measured, elegant, deliberate. James felt the whispers of the crowd fade, replaced by a silence that made his own heartbeat thunder in his ears. When she finally stopped before him, she looked at him as though she could see straight into his soul. "I'm going to marry this man," she said, her voice soft, melodic, yet carrying the weight of absolute certainty. The hall erupted into shocked murmurs. Nobles gasped. Guards stiffened. Advisors whispered urgently to one another. James blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. Marry him? He was just a human. An outsider, a representative of a planet far away. He had not spoken to her more than a few words. How could she? Yet her eyes did not waver. Lyra did not flinch under the astonishment around her. She looked at James with a certainty he could not comprehend, as if she had seen something in him no one else could see. Courage, heart, humanity. James felt his chest tighten, his mind spinning. Fear, excitement, and disbelief mingled inside him. He had crossed light years, faced dangers no human had imagined, and now here he was, chosen by an alien princess in front of an entire royal court. The weight of the moment was overwhelming, yet a strange warmth spread through him. This was more than a mission now. It was a challenge, a responsibility, a chance to show not just Zephyria but the galaxy what humanity was capable of. And for the first time, James felt that perhaps humans could be more than fragile, small beings in the vast universe. Perhaps they could inspire, perhaps they could belong. As the whispers of the court swirled around him, James squared his shoulders. He met Lyra's gaze and nodded slightly. Whatever this future held, he would face it. For her, for humanity, and for the unknown adventure that had only just begun. The entire royal court buzzed with disbelief. Nobles whispered, guards exchanged uneasy glances, and advisors leaned toward each other, murmuring in Zephyrian. Yet Princess Lyra stood steady, her gaze locked on James. She did not blink, did not hesitate. There was a calmness about her that made the chaos around her seem unreal. James felt his heart racing. He had trained for diplomacy, for danger, for making first contact with alien species, but nothing could prepare him for this. He was just a human. He was fragile, awkward, and so much smaller than the beings around him. And yet the princess had chosen him. He wanted to speak, to say something clever, but words failed him. All he could do was bow respectfully and try to hide his shock. Lyra took a step closer, and the hall seemed to shift around them. Even the guard straightened instinctively, as if sensing her authority in the air. "I have seen many humans," she said softly, her voice carrying across the room. "I have studied your species. And yet when I saw you, I knew." She paused, her eyes never leaving James. "I knew that you are different." The words felt heavy, more powerful than any command or declaration. James's mind spun. Different? How could a princess from a species that had lived for thousands of years see anything special in him? He was just a man, a representative of a struggling planet, and yet in her eyes he felt recognized. The whispers of the court grew louder. Some looked confused, some skeptical, some even angry. But Lyra ignored them all. She reached out her hand just slightly, and James noticed a warmth in her gesture that went beyond formality. It was not just a choice, it was an invitation, an acknowledgement of who he was, not what he represented. James felt a strange courage rising inside him. All his doubts, all his insecurities seemed to melt away in the light of her gaze. This was no ordinary meeting. This was more than diplomacy. This was trust. This was connection. "Why me?" he finally asked, his voice breaking slightly. Lyra smiled softly, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "Because you do not hide behind strength or wealth. You do not pretend to be perfect. You are human, and in your heart I see courage, honesty, and something more. Something rare, something I cannot ignore." James felt a lump in his throat. He wanted to speak, to tell her that he was not worthy, that he was just a simple man from a fragile planet. But somehow he could not. He felt as if all the walls he had built around himself were crumbling, and he was standing raw, exposed, yet alive in a way he had never been before. The court's whispers faded into silence. Even the guards seemed to hold their breath. For a moment it was just the two of them, standing in a world that suddenly felt larger than the palace, larger than Zephyria, larger than the galaxy itself. Lyra took another step forward. Her hand brushed against his, delicate but firm. "I will marry you," she said again, her voice like a promise. "Not because it is expected, not because it is convenient, but because I have chosen you. You are the one I trust, the one I believe in, the one I will stand beside." James felt a strange mix of fear and wonder. Fear, because he had no idea what lay ahead, how humans and Zephyrians could ever truly coexist. Wonder, because in that single moment he realized something incredible. Humanity, fragile and small as it might seem, could touch hearts even across the stars. He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. I will stand by you," he said, his voice steadying. "Through whatever comes." Lyra's smile widened, radiant and warm, and for the first time, James felt that the impossible might be possible. The princess had chosen him, not for his rank, not for his strength, but for the very human heart that he had never thought could matter so much in a galaxy full of gods, monsters and warriors, and in that moment, James knew one thing clearly: his journey had changed. He was no longer just a human explorer. He was a human who had been seen, truly seen, by an alien princess, and that recognition would shape not just his destiny, but the destiny of his world. Life in the palace was more difficult than James had imagined. Every day was a lesson in patience, observation, and humility. The Zephyrians moved with grace, speaking in a language that felt like music, their gestures elegant and precise. Every meal, every ceremony, every simple conversation was layered with rules James did not understand. At times he stumbled, knocking over a crystal cup or mispronouncing a word, and the courtiers would glance at him with polite curiosity or thinly veiled disdain. Yet Princess Lyra never made him feel small. She walked beside him during lessons in Zephyrian etiquette, explaining gestures, phrases, and customs. When James faltered, she would place her hand on his arm, her touch warm and steady, and whisper words of encouragement. "It is not weakness to learn slowly," she said once. "It is strength to keep trying." Despite her guidance, James often felt like an outsider. He missed the rough simplicity of Earth, the straightforward ways humans expressed themselves. Here everything was ritual, every movement choreographed, every word weighted with centuries of tradition. And though he admired the beauty of it, he longed for freedom, for a place where he could just be himself. One afternoon, as he wandered the palace gardens, he found himself in the secret section Lyra had shown him, a hidden courtyard full of soft glowing plants and streams that sparkled like liquid stars. Lyra was there, sitting by the water, her gaze thoughtful. "You look troubled," she said, her voice gentle. James sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's hard. I try to follow the rules, to understand, to fit in, but every day I feel further from it. I'm just a human, Lyra, small, fragile, and I fear I will never belong here." Lyra stood and approached him, her eyes soft but firm. "James, listen. You do not need to belong to Zephyria by imitating us. You belong because of who you are. Your humanity, your courage, your heart, your mistakes, they matter. They are not weaknesses. They are proof that life is alive, that it fights, that it feels. That is something my people often forget." Her words filled him with warmth, but also a deep awareness of the challenge ahead. The palace and the council might see him as an outsider forever. Many would never accept a human as part of their world. He knew he had to prove not just his love for Lyra, but humanity's worth. The days passed with subtle tests. The council asked him questions about Earth, about human history, about human strength and resilience. They challenged him, trying to uncover flaws or weaknesses. James answered honestly, sometimes faltering, but always with sincerity. Slowly, he noticed shifts in the council's demeanor. Small nods, brief smiles, a pause in judgment. Perhaps humanity's spirit could bridge the gap between worlds. Evenings became moments of peace for James and Lyra. They would walk the palace gardens under the twin moons, sharing stories of their lives, their dreams, their fears. James spoke of Earth, the oceans, the mountains, the endless skies. Lyra spoke of Zephyria, their history, their philosophy, the stories of ancestors who had shaped their people. And in those conversations, James discovered a bond deeper than attraction or duty. He found understanding, respect, and a connection that transcended species. Yet the shadow of doubt always lingered. Would the council accept a human? Could two worlds so different and proud truly unite? James knew there would be obstacles, prejudice, fear, and the weight of tradition, but Lyra's hand in his reminded him why he had come. Not for glory, not for power, but for love, for humanity, and for a chance to prove that courage and heart could matter, even across the stars. For the first time, James realized that belonging was not about copying another world. It was about showing the truth of oneself, and sometimes that truth could shine brighter than all the rules, rituals, or expectations in the universe. Night fell over Zephyria, painting the sky in deep violet and silver. James stood on the palace balcony gazing at the twin moons. The soft light reflected in his eyes, but a sense of unease crept through him. He had grown accustomed to the beauty of Zephyria, but the peace felt fragile. Something in the wind and the way the palace gates shivered told him that danger was near. Suddenly alarms blared, sharp, piercing, terrifying. Red lights pulsed across the palace, casting long shadows that twisted like living things. James's heart raced. He knew what this meant. The Krelth had come. The Krelth were creatures from the darkest regions of the galaxy. Monstrous, relentless, and merciless, they had destroyed worlds without hesitation. Now they had chosen Zephyria. Their claws could rip through steel, their eyes burned with hatred, and their numbers were terrifying. James had read reports of them, but nothing in books or simulations could prepare him for their reality. Lyra appeared at his side, her expression fierce. "James," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We must protect the city, come." James grabbed a weapon, a sleek Zephyrian energy rifle, its power humming in his hands. He had never fired one before, but instinct took over. The corridors of the palace filled with screams and the sounds of battle. Guards moved with deadly grace, fighting the creatures with precise strikes. James stumbled at first, clumsy with his weapon, but his fear transformed into determination. He would not let harm come to Lyra, or her people. A Krelth lunged from the shadows, its claws aimed at a group of fleeing citizens. James reacted instinctively, firing the rifle. The beam hit the creature and it shrieked, collapsing to the floor. His hands shook, but he did not stop. Every creature he faced, every challenge he met, pushed him further than he had ever been. For the first time, he understood that bravery was not the absence of fear. It was action in spite of it. The battle raged on. Fires burned, alarms screamed, and the palace shook. James moved through the chaos, protecting those who could not fight. He pulled Zephyrian citizens from harm, blocked attacks with whatever he could find, and never let his focus waver from Lyra. At one moment, a Krelth leapt toward Lyra. James threw himself in front of her, taking the strike to his shoulder. Pain exploded through him, white-hot and sharp, but he held his ground. Lyra's eyes widened in horror, then softened with something James could barely describe. Pride, trust, and love all mixed together. "James," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Hold on." He gritted his teeth, firing again, forcing the Krelth back. Around them, Zephyrian defenders began to regain control, inspired by the humans standing beside their princess. James realized something profound in that moment. His courage, his willingness to fight for others, had shown them something they had never expected. Humanity could be small, but it could shine like a star in the darkest night. The Krelth finally retreated as dawn broke, casting golden light across the palace. The city was scarred, buildings ruined, gardens trampled, but thousands of lives were saved. James's shoulder throbbed, his body exhausted, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. He had fought not as a human among aliens, but as a protector, a fighter, and a symbol of humanity's heart. Lyra ran to him, holding his arm gently. Her eyes glistened with tears. "You saved us," she said softly. "Not just me. All of Zephyria. You have shown that humans are not weak. You have shown courage, strength, and heart." James looked around at the city, at the people who had doubted him, and realized something incredible. Humanity was capable of more than survival. It could inspire, protect, and unite. And now he understood that he had earned more than respect. He had earned trust, not just from Lyra, but from an entire world. As the first rays of sunlight bathed Zephyria, James and Lyra stood together. He was battered, tired, and wounded, but stronger than ever. And he knew, deep in his heart, that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, hand in hand, heart to heart. The morning after the attack, the palace was quiet, but tense. Fires had been extinguished, walls repaired, and injured citizens cared for. But the memory of the Krelth assault lingered in every shadow. James moved through the corridors slowly, his shoulder still aching from the strike he had taken to protect Lyra. Every step reminded him that he had crossed a line. He was no longer just a visitor. He had become part of Zephyria's story. The council summoned him that morning. The same advisors who had once questioned his worth now looked at him differently. Their eyes were not filled with doubt, but with curiosity, cautious respect, and something that James recognized as acknowledgement. He had expected a formal meeting, perhaps a ceremony of thanks, but he had not expected what would happen next. "You have proven something remarkable," the eldest counselor said, his voice calm but weighty. "Not many could face the Krelth and survive, let alone protect others in the heat of battle. You have shown courage, resilience, and heart." James nodded, unsure of what to say. He had never thought of himself as a hero. He was just a man doing what he had to do. But as he looked around the room, he realized that his actions had inspired not just Lyra, but an entire world. Humanity had a chance to be seen differently, not as fragile or weak, but as capable, brave, and worthy. Lyra entered then, her presence radiant. She took James's hand in hers and led him forward. "This man," she said, her voice carrying through the chamber, "has shown what humans can achieve. Not through force alone, but through courage, loyalty, and heart. He has saved lives that could have been lost. He has proven that humanity is not to be underestimated." The council exchanged glances. Some bowed, others nodded, and a few whispered in approval. James felt a surge of pride, but it was not for himself. It was for the human race, for the people he represented. He had come to Zephyria as one man, yet his actions had reflected the spirit of Earth itself. Later, as he walked through the palace gardens with Lyra, he reflected on everything that had happened. "I never imagined I could make a difference here," he admitted, his voice quiet. "I'm just a human. Fragile, small. I don't know if I belong in a place like this." Lyra smiled and stopped, turning to face him. Her hand cupped his cheek gently. "James, it is not size, strength, or perfection that matters. It is heart. Humanity has a fire in it, a fire that refuses to surrender, that stands up for what is right, that loves even when the odds are against it. That is why you belong. That is why I chose you." James felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He had traveled across the stars, faced dangers no human had imagined, and now he understood something profound. Courage, heart, and integrity mattered more than power or tradition. Humanity's worth was not measured in weapons or wealth. It was measured in spirit, in the ability to rise, protect, and inspire. The sun was setting as they walked, painting the sky with hues of gold and purple. Citizens passed by, some stopping to nod at James, others offering quiet smiles of gratitude. He realized that the Krelth attack had done more than threaten the palace. It had shown the Zephyrians what humans were truly capable of. Lyra squeezed his hand and leaned her head on his shoulder. "You have changed this world," she whispered. "Not just with your actions, but with your heart. I see now that humans are not fragile. You shine, James, you truly shine." James looked out over the city, feeling a sense of hope and pride he had never known. Humanity had fought, struggled, and endured, and now it had a place among the stars. And in Lyra's eyes he saw the reflection of that hope, of a future where two worlds could unite through courage, trust, and love. For the first time, James understood that his journey was bigger than himself. It was about humanity, about showing that even the smallest, most fragile beings could make a difference. And with Lyra by his side, he felt ready to face whatever the universe could throw at them. Together. Days turned into weeks, and life in the palace began to settle. The scars of the Krelth attack were still visible, cracks in the walls, scorched gardens, and lingering fear. But the spirit of Zephyria had not been broken. James moved through the palace with growing confidence. The council had begun to accept him, albeit slowly, and the citizens, who had once regarded him as a fragile outsider, now offered smiles and nods of respect. But it was not acceptance or recognition that mattered most to James. It was Lyra. Every day, he found himself drawn to her, not just because she was a princess, but because she saw him, not the uniform, not the human ambassador, but the man he truly was. One evening under the twin moons, Lyra led James to the secret garden they had discovered together weeks before. The air shimmered with soft golden light from the glowing plants, and the gentle sound of water flowing over smooth stones filled the quiet. Lyra turned to him, her expression soft and vulnerable, a side of her few had ever seen. "James," she said, taking his hands in hers. I chose you the moment I saw you, not because it was expected or because of duty, but because of who you are. Your courage, your honesty, your heart. It called to me in a way I cannot explain. James felt warmth surge through him. He had crossed galaxies, faced dangers beyond imagination, and endured judgment from an entire alien council. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. The raw honesty in Lyra's eyes made him feel exposed, yet strangely strong. I never thought I could be enough, James admitted quietly. I am just a human, fragile, small. I am not a warrior, not a hero, just a man who wants to do right by you. Lyra smiled, tilting her head gently. James, it is not perfection that matters. It is heart. Humanity has a fire in it. A fire that refuses to bow, that protects, that loves even when the odds are against it. That fire brought you here to me. That fire makes you worthy of standing beside me, not as a guest, but as a partner. James felt a lump in his throat. For so long he had thought humans were weak, fragile, insignificant in the vast galaxy. And yet Lyra had seen the truth. That even the smallest species could shine brightly, fiercely, and inspire hope. They stood together in silence, the soft glow of the plants reflecting in their eyes. Slowly, Lyra leaned closer, her forehead resting against his. James closed his eyes, feeling her warmth, her trust, her unwavering belief in him. In that moment, the worries of politics, culture, and danger seemed to vanish. It was just the two of them, two hearts from different worlds connected across the stars. I will stand with you, James whispered, his voice steady despite the emotion swelling in him. Through everything, through danger, through the unknown, I will stand with you. Always. Lyra's eyes glistened with tears, but her smile never faltered. And I with you, she replied. We are not just a human and a princess. We are proof that two worlds, no matter how different, can unite through heart, trust, and love. For the first time, James felt truly seen, not as an ambassador, not as a soldier, not as a human, but as himself. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers, politics, and uncertainties. Yet in that glowing garden, he understood something profound. Love was a force stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, stronger than even the most powerful enemies. As they walked back to the palace, hand in hand, James felt a sense of peace he had never known. The council, the citizens, the challenges of Zephyria, they were important, yes, but love was what gave him purpose, what gave humanity meaning in this distant galaxy. With Lyra by his side, he knew they could face anything. Together they were unstoppable, and in that quiet, starlit moment, James realized that his journey had always been about more than exploration or survival. It had been about finding a place to belong, a heart to protect, and a love that could cross the boundaries of worlds. The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Twin moons hung low in the sky, casting soft silver light across the palace. Citizens from all corners of Zephyria gathered to witness the union of Princess Lyra and James, the human who had shown courage, heart, and the spirit of an entire world. The streets were alive with music, laughter, and the vibrant colors of Zephyrian banners fluttering in the gentle breeze. James stood at the palace steps, dressed in formal attire that still felt strange against his human frame. His heart pounded, not from fear but from the overwhelming weight of the moment. He had traveled across stars, faced enemies that could destroy worlds, and endured the scrutiny of an alien council. Yet nothing had prepared him for the sight of Lyra approaching, radiant as ever, her eyes full of love and unwavering trust. As she walked toward him, her hand reaching for his, James felt a surge of emotions: pride, wonder, fear, and above all, hope. She was not just a princess. She was a symbol of an entire civilization, and she had chosen him, a human, to stand beside her. In that choice lay a message that would echo across galaxies. Humanity, small and fragile as it might seem, could inspire, could protect, and could be worthy of love and respect among the stars. The council and citizens fell silent as Lyra and James faced each other. Words of ceremony were spoken in the melodious Zephyrian language, their meaning clear even without translation. Commitment, trust, courage, and unity. Lyra's hand found James's, their fingers intertwining naturally as if they had always been meant to hold one another. When the vows came, Lyra's voice rang clear and strong. "I choose you," she said, her eyes locked on James. "Not because it is expected, but because my heart has seen yours. You have shown courage, strength, and a heart that shines brighter than any star. I will stand with you through life, through challenge, and through all the unknown." James swallowed hard, his voice trembling but steady. "I choose you," he replied. "I will stand with you, protect you, and honor you. Not as a human standing among aliens, but as a partner, as someone who believes in you, and in the hope that our hearts together can shape a better galaxy." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Humans and Zephyrians alike celebrated, their voices blending into a harmony of joy and unity. James looked around, realizing that this moment was bigger than love alone. It was a message to every human back on Earth, to every Zephyrian who had doubted a human's worth. Courage, heart, and humanity mattered. Even across the stars, even against impossible odds, the human spirit could shine brightly. After the ceremony, James and Lyra walked together along the palace balcony. The city below was bathed in the golden light of dawn, buildings glimmering like jewels, rivers reflecting the sky's brilliance. Lyra leaned her head on his shoulder, and he felt a sense of peace he had never known. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but he would not face them alone. "We have a long journey ahead," James said softly. Lyra smiled, lifting her head to meet his gaze. "Yes," she said, "but together we can face anything. Not just for us, but for our worlds, humanity and Zephyria, united by courage, heart, and love." James held her hand tightly, feeling the warmth of her trust and belief. He thought of Earth, of the people he represented, and of the journey that had brought him here. From a small, fragile human to a man who had faced aliens, danger, and prejudice, he had become something more. He had become a symbol, proof that humanity could reach the stars not just with technology, but with heart. As the twin moons set and the first light of a new day touched the city, James and Lyra stood together hand in hand, looking toward the horizon. Their love had crossed worlds, defied expectations, and united civilizations. And in that moment, James knew one thing clearly. Humanity had a place among the stars, and with Lyra by his side, he would face the galaxy fearlessly, heart to heart forever. The universe was vast, full of dangers, wonders, and mysteries, but together they would shine. Human and princess, courage and heart, love and hope, proof that even the smallest beings could change the galaxy.